The Bible is one of the most misunderstood and I'll say trickiest books out there to understand, because when you're reading it, for one thing, I mean, there's several books in the Bible. I believe there's like 72 books in the Bible, of which 6 of them were removed, I think, or something like that. So there's like 66, and I'm saying I think because these numbers were in my head probably over 10 years ago, and I'm not sure if I'm still 100% correct, but I believe that's true. The Catholic Bible has 72 books in it, I believe, and most Bibles have 66 in it, which is very important in and of itself, because when you're reading these different books, you're reading about different snippets in history, and this Bible was compiled in this certain chronological order to kind of, I guess you can say, put together some form of a law, a cosmic law, is really what the Bible is. You're getting, when you study the Bible, you're getting into cosmic law. And the reason why it's important is because, see, we have law, of course, on different levels. And every time you draw up a new set of laws, of course, you have to have some form of a government or some way to administer these laws. However, when you draw up a new set of laws, you usually do this based upon coming from another set of laws. And it's like, say, for instance, if you're coming from one land, like an exodus, so you take your people from one land and you move them out into another land, you have to have a set of laws to govern these people, correct? So this is kind of like why the Bible was compiled in such a way as it is, because it tells a story of several groups of people making several, I don't want to use the term exodus, it's plural, but making an exodus, because really it's just one single exodus, making an exodus out of the several different lands. And I'm saying this because it's very important. So really, when you read the Bible, when you read the book of Revelation, it's called the book of Revelation. And this is a Revelations, plural. And these book of Revelations are actually several different scrolls and texts that was taken from Ethiopia, and that was taken from Sumeria, believe it or not. And there's a figure by the name of Zakar, and a lot of what you read in the book of Revelation comes from the stories of Zakar, Z-A-K-A-R. And Zakar, it's very important that you understand Zakar, because when you understand Zakar, you're getting into how we came from Atlantis and the sky, and came from Sirius and different star constellations, and eventually went into the water, and then eventually went on to the earth. And this is where you get Adam from. So in reality, the book of Revelations is talking about the end and a beginning. And when you get into the book of Genesis, this is the beginning. So really the book of Revelations is older. This is where you would start. So when it talks about the dragon knocking a third of the stars out of the sky, it's speaking about a high-level civilization that found a way to live off of energy, and how a particular entity came and ended that because of them losing the knowledge and becoming sleep, essentially. Them going into a state of sleep is what happened. So you hear about Adam and Eve, right? See, Adam and Eve, they knew. Well, Eve knew because she was taught by the serpent, which was really the dragon, when you study that. So Eve, she knew. Eve knew that, she knew the cosmic laws, what I'm saying. And because she was taught by the serpent, as you read about in Genesis, so she knew the cosmic laws. She knew she was the queen. She knew the codes of sovereignty and how to be a sovereign, and she taught. It was her job to teach Adam and pass on the information to Adam. However, they ended up going in together and mixing in together in such a way that was negative. And this is why you start to read about murder and all of these other things. See, in the book of Revelations, God doesn't murder in that sense. God destroys. His attribute is actually the destroyer. So when you read about like murder and people getting killed, and you say, well, God killed this person or murdered that person, God is the destroyer, not the murderer or the killer, but the destroyer, which is a different attribute. When you're dealing with administering justice, though, is what I'm talking about. But I'm not getting into that here because I want to talk about this civilization. So they fell from this high state. They're talking about stars because they were getting their energy from stars. That's right, they were channeling energy from stars to run their civilization. Their currency and everything was linked into this energy. And what happened was they allowed this dragon to come in at some point because he came from a different star constellation that they couldn't read. He was able to knock out their government and their civilization. So then here you go, they went into the waters because they went into the land of Atlantis for a minute. Then they eventually, this is why you hear about the waters in the beginning of the book of Genesis, they're talking about water. They say in the beginning there was void and water covered the face of the deep. This is talking about water because they were flooded economically. So this is going into money and economics actually, but it's physical too, because it becomes physical when you can't pay and you don't pay certain taxes. You think, and people who have certain wars and stuff, wars break out because of taxes. So what happens is you don't pay certain taxes, then war breaks out. Then, then eventually either your land is going to get taken away or the war is going to end some kind of way. But if it escalates, then everybody loses all history and things start over like a Genesis. So this is what happened. So you're reading about this high civilization in Revelations, then they go to the beginning in Genesis to a new civilization from water, then eventually they come out the waters and they move onto the earth. There's several creations in Genesis, and a lot of you know about this. I'm not talking about that because I'm really speaking about economics, about something that's going to happen again. So so they move out of this. So the point that I'm making, and the most important point I want to point out is because in the last video I talked about your sex and how if you don't understand your sexuality on a level where you came from, you're not going to be able to make a certain type of a shift financially into this new government that we're getting into. And this is why I'm bringing this information up. So the woman was given the information first, so she was given the knowledge, and she passed it on to Zakar or Adam at this time because he didn't know the history. His name was Zakar. He lost his name. He became Adam or Adam, which is another version of Zakar. Zakar was really the one from Atlantis. This is going into another story. So he became Adam. Very important. And then over time, they talk about them going into the land of Nod or going into a certain type of sleep because they mixed in a certain experiment together, having what's called sex improperly caused them to fall even further into a certain state of sleep. So they became essentially slaves. Essentially is what happened. And this is important because this is what's going to happen again, or what's happening again, and it's going to continue to happen if we don't begin to wake up on a level of economics. I'm not just talking about what you know and talking about all of this, stunt and stuff and all that, but begin to wake up on a level of economics. Very important, because if we don't do this, we're going to go back into a form of sleep. And if you were born into this world, you were born to fight. You were not born to sleep. You were not born to sit back. You are a fighter. You were here to fight, meaning that you're fighting against yourself. You don't have to physically go out and hurt anybody. I'm not saying that, unless, you're attacked. But at the end of the day, there's always a struggle or some form of a battle that you're going to have to get into so that you can begin to master yourself, because you have to master yourself so that we can get back to unlimited progress, so we can get out of this old state. We have to learn how to become alchemists, to learn how to work from nothing. I'm going to give you an example. We have to learn about credit and things of that nature. See, they lost their sovereignty, and I'm going to end with this. This is what's happening now. See, certain states aren't sovereign. I'm going to give you an example of something that happened with me, and maybe I'll talk more about it as I finish writing this video book, is what I'm doing. So, certain states aren't sovereign. Still tied into the story that I was talking about, but just ending and going ahead and finishing this. So certain states are not sovereign. They're not telling you this. There's supposed to be 50 states. I'm talking about in the U.S. I have fans all over the world. In the U.S., certain states are not sovereign, but they're still claiming to be sovereign. They're living off of credit is what they're doing. And the reason why they're not sovereign is because certain credit cards, remember I told you in other videos, UCCs went into bankruptcy for different reasons. So certain credit cards have went out. And they don't want to tell people this because they don't want to send the world into a state of chaos. And I'm saying this is important. I'm going to make a point. So certain states aren't sovereign. So I'm going to give you an example of what happened with me. You can get killed messing around with this type of stuff. Because if you go to one state and their, say for instance, their credit card is out, and they're sovereign, but in that state they're still passing around currency, acting like, they're still in operation, right? And you may be a citizen of that state, you got your ID, whatever, some formal way they have jurisdiction over you. So you decide to go across over into another state that may really be sovereign. This state isn't living off of credit. This state is issuing credit. They're secured party creditors. This is what's going on here in the U.S. You have certain states that are receiving credit from other states. They are keeping it a secret, and they're not even telling their citizens. And then you have certain states that are secured party creditors that are issuing credit. And I need to talk about this because this is important. You can make a lot of money if you know this, but you can also get into a lot of danger if you don't know what's going on as well. So this is how I took a dollar. I'm going to give you an example. I'm trying to find this dollar. I had to cross. I left a state that was living off credit, like a corporation, pretty much. I'm a sovereign, but I didn't know they was living like that, right? So they abducted me into their shit, right? So I took a dollar from a sovereign land. You may say, well, that's just a dollar. Anybody, no. I made this dollar somewhere else, and it took that dollar back, right? This is a real story. Took this dollar back, right? Within a few months, just living in it. So I took this. Okay, let me make sure I make the story clear. So I came from this state that was in debt. They're not sovereign, right? And I went to this sovereign state, and I didn't know this. And they, I through the certain symbols and different, lodges and people, kind of sent me certain signals, and I'm able to communicate on a cosmic level with a lot of different groups. They told me, essentially, not directly, but they gave me the signal, like, yeah, you're coming from a state that's not sovereign. They don't have, their credit is out. And I didn't even notice. I'm like, whoa, I thought they were sovereign credit. Because if you're sovereign, you can issue credit. They couldn't issue credit. So they're getting their credit from another state. So I came back to the state to test it, right? Carrying this dollar, so they mad, They don't want to give me anything. Because I make, I'm a charity. Another story. So once they found out that I got wind of this, they don't want to donate anything to my charity, right? So I'm starving. So I take this same dollar and just live off of it. I mean, just, I'm making change. I mean, I'm getting quarters, but I'm spending days and hours getting change to eat. Because I'm not going to sell my commodities and my credit. I'm not going to sell out for your ID. And that's what they wanted me to do. So I'm sitting up here living essentially off of a dollar in credit from a sovereign state. And they getting mad because I didn't know why they were getting mad. But guess why they was getting mad? Because I'm sitting up here holding a dollar and it's costing them like thousands of dollars every day on the stock market because of how much credit I was generating from just holding on to this dollar, right? So come to find out, I appraised it through my methods of not know how to appraise through my nation, Shout out to the Moorish Empire. I was able to appraise this, and come to find out, this dollar is worth, like, probably in their market, it's probably worth like $100 or something. No, like $20 at the time. I'm over-exaggerating. It did end up going up to 100 though. I'm gonna finish the story. So it was worth like $20. So over time, the bottom line is that I ended up turning that $1 into like this, like some 20s that they cashed me out because it was costing them so much money. I'm for real. Like, several of them here, I can't show all of it because I'm gonna shut down in a minute. I'm not bragging, but I have to give examples because I'm going into talking about proof now. I have to talk about and prove a lot of the stuff that I was teaching. I don't have to, but this is what my book is about. Just giving examples, not really proving. There's no right and wrong, but just giving examples of what you're going to have to do if you want to get out of this. Because this shit is serious, yo. So, yeah, this $1 from this nation turned into like $100, basically. The end of the story. From just holding on to this $1 is very important that you know this, because this is the same thing that happened to those of old, to those nations of old. They forgot the knowledge. They lost the knowledge of who they were. They lost their sovereignty. And they ended up getting cast out of the sky, high-level sophisticated energy grid and government, and moving onto the ground, which is what the story of the Garden of Eden is about. Having to build themselves back up, which is kind of sort of where we are today, but then not, because there's different intermissions and interludes that I'll talk about in other videos. So I thank you for giving me the time and listening to my information, and I'll be coming back up with another video soon. And as always, I will greet you and leave you and wisdom and be vigilant.